is funk. Thoughts deep, boys steeped in the depths that he sunk. Big stress, depressed in the middle of fall. Sky gray, I lay in the thick of it all. I wonder, how long can a human survive just staying alive or carrying the rest of the tribe? Waiting for the day to arrive or struggling dies, and I be doing way, way more than getting by. So why? Cop myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Hey, cop myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Realize life is so much more than just living a day. Every day I can sit and reflect and reconnect to myself and know that I've been given. See, giving up is not an option. So when I'm looking at gray skies, I'll be adopting a new way to deal with a test. Lord, relieve me of stress and bring me looking like when blessings drop in. And so I go, cop myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Hey, here we go. Yeah. Let's do this. Y'all ready? 1, 2, 3. In times of test, let no harm beset me, oh my Lord, oh my Lord.
Go. Get my shit together. All right. Good evening, everybody. This is Divided We Stand. That's right. We're broadcasting here from Bridge, New Jersey via Arlington, Virginia, which is more or less Washington, D.C. This is Divided We Stand. If you'd like to become a member of our Facebook group page, please do so. We'd be really happy to have you. There are a few questions there, but you actually don't have to answer them, but we ask that you just kind of look at it. And it is quite popular, that site. If you find us on YouTube, a smaller membership there, we ask that you subscribe. We are not monetized, which means you won't see any commercials. This is what I like and what Dave likes. You know, there's just no need for monetization unless you have tens of thousands of subscribers. I don't see the reason. We're small potatoes here. We'd like to have a lot of subscribers, but look, basically we're not going to have it unless we, have somebody like Steven Pinker on or whomever. So we'll just have to be a small cadre of commiserating, progressive, I suppose you could say. Although, who knows what will happen with Trump and the FCC and whatnot with us. Who knows? I doubt it, but who knows? Anyway, from Arlington, Virginia, it's our David Price, journalist,
Brian.
educator, and such. And you were all over the Northern Hemisphere this
not quite
past
the Northern
few
Hemisphere,
weeks.
but
Tell us.
I'm a little disappointed, Brian. You didn't tell me, and nobody, in Divided We Stand told me. Do you know it's cold in Alaska? Who the hell knew that? I didn't know that.
Well, it's definitely cold, but it is getting. The good thing is, well, not the good thing. It's actually bad.
No.
The thing is, it is getting warmer than it used to be. The Bering Strait's not frozen now, where it used to be at the end of September.
Just to support just what you said, it was really the two. We were on an Alaskan cruise, but really I was doing the thing for my book on music cruising. So we were at the concert at sea part. But on the regular Princess cruise, they bring lecturers on.
Right.
And they really had a good naturalist. And he, leaned into that to let people know, that this is not the myth. This is real. He had real statistics.
Especially up there. There's a great
what was so cool about that is of actual bergs and things there that are changing. So he would show, they told me he would show pictures of something the way it was prior and the way it is now.
Cool.
So, of course, most people who would go on an Alaskan cruise are probably supportive of nature anyway. Got to spend a little bit of time in Seattle. I hadn't been there for a while. And now back here. And it's very, let me say, I can go out of my house and I'm involved, or my apartment, not my house, and jump on the metro. And like I said, we're 4.6 miles from the White House. And I can be involved in. It's interesting to be away from it for 10 days and just read about it. So that was an interesting experience. You already touched on what I think maybe will take the whole show tonight. And that would be, of course, if you go back to President Trump's inaugural, which kind of outlined what he was going to do this time, he said he was going to return, this is that quote, he was going to return free speech to America. Now, we're used to politicians, promising tax cuts or whatever, not delivering.
Right.
But what he has actually done, which is so interesting, he said he was disturbed with cancel culture, which the right was initially, right? Well, they've taken the cancel culture that was there. I mean, we can't argue there was some cancel, and put it on steroids through Trump. Now, what I'd like to start with tonight, if you'd indulge me, there are very few subjects that I'm, feel any expertise of. Of course, my two careers, education and journalism, but also for 3 years I delivered First Amendment tours for the museum. So I feel pretty comfortable talking about the First Amendment. Now, one of the things I'll start with, and it would be, this is true. I've seen it. I've seen the polling that does it. More people can name the immediate members of the Homer Simpson family than they can the 5 principles in the First Amendment.
Right.
That's number one. Number two, I hate to disappoint people, but that free speech is so important. It was the first. Do you realize that was not the First Amendment? There were 2 amendments before that.
Well, tell us
so
about
the First Amendment. Well, no, the First Amendment was the Third Amendment, and they didn't approve the first 2. So the Third Amendment became the First Amendment. But certainly, I do agree with the thought that the First Amendment is what makes America America. Take anything out, and you don't have America. So what does it really say? The First Amendment. Well, it says 2 things in the religion area. Number one, we cannot have a state-imposed religion. That is number one. And number two, barring a thing of cannibalism, in your scripture, we are open to all religions. Then it comes up with free speech. We'll come back to that. Of course, it has freedom of the press. We'll come back to that tonight. It has, hold on a minute here. Hold on. That could be Donald Trump. Hold on. I need to turn that off.
Right. Real professional there, Dave. Must be Pornhub calling.
Yeah, it's it was. I guess I could say it was related. That was.
Although I want to tell you, I'm beginning to think that Republicans and MAGA is getting their news from Pornhub. So
Well, they
ridiculous.
may. Who knows? All right. So back.
Okay.
So where? Oh, okay. So we have two more. We have freedom of assembly, which is under some fire, and then petition. And a lot of people, let's get rid of petition. Basically, what that says is there's two forms of petition. You have the right to it. First of all, petition involves writing, so it's not speaking. So I guess you could call freedom of speech in writing that you can direct to your government officials. Basically, it's asking them to do something or telling them not to do something. So a sign that you carry to protest, you're actually involving three of your rights at that point. That is a petition. If you're telling the government, shut up, Trump. Okay.
Right.
Secondly, if you're doing it with others, you're using the right of assembly. And third, you're using the right of free speech in terms of a written type of thing. So the one we're focusing on now is free speech. Now, what I'm going to say first is one of the most misunderstood about free speech. This is accurate, correct, non-debatable. All the First Amendment says about free speech is this: the government has no right to censor free speech. Now, what does that mean? It means that you work for a business, they tell you don't talk about politics, you do. What can happen to you, Brian?
Well, if you work for a company can fire you.
Yeah, see, free speech is like,
Yeah, if you're a private organization, that's out the door. This is we're talking about.
And then it gets into some hairy areas with public. We had a big problem in Richmond, the Richmond school system, because they ruled at one point we could not talk to anybody, reporters. Now, why do organizations want that? They want it to speak in one voice. Sometimes it can be good, but basically, and actually, they could say that. Now, we appealed back then, before you came, we appealed on the grounds that a school system is not a private business. That it is a governmental agency,
Right.
And and they agreed. So what they did was wrong, and we were able to reverse it.
Wow.
But people just say, I have the right to free speech. No, you have the right not to be censored by the government for whatever you say.
Right.
So I think a lot of people confuse that, and understandably so. So let's jump right in and show you, or talk to you, or tell you, whatever the case may be, what is really, again, going on with Jimmy Kimmel. So, Brian, why don't you pick up your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that
first, what happened for anybody who's been sleeping?
Okay, so as usual, Kimmel did his monologue, and most of it was centered around how Trump reacted to the assassination of Kirk. And he showed, I believe, a video of Trump, and he's talking about how they're going to build something, at the White House or something like that. Right. And it was more, it was kind of like 9/11, where he said, well, he's being interviewed about this terrible situation, and this is on 9/11, saying, look at how large my building, it's the largest building now, the tallest building in Manhattan, which it wasn't. And so, so there wasn't anything that was, screwed up. He kind of alluded to that maybe this was one of his own that was doing this, but that's certainly, you can bullshit and lie. First of all, he's a comedian. Lenny Bruce went through this a long time ago. We've been through this a million times. But the reality is, Trump didn't like it because he doesn't like being embarrassed. And you and I have gone over this ad infinitum, that the real power seems to be the comedians now, because this is a pop culture war. And they're so effective. And, this guy's being humiliated. It's like somebody, a physical humiliation of somebody's body. You get a big ass, a small penis, or something like that. And then the person.
Which he does have both, by the way.
Yeah, but we're not concerned about. I don't give a shit about that. But what the fact is that he does, and this is a psychological issue, and he's going to lie, and because he's got people who are all subservient to him, they're going to make it into, that Jimmy Kimmel said something just absolutely horrible, saying like, we're going to kill every minority or something like that. That's the way they're trying to turn this thing. and they feel if enough people in the public do this, well, then we've got the Supreme Court, we've got people who, with Alito, they can just use whatever this is, whatever amendment, or like the First Amendment, just use semantic fiat and say, well, doesn't apply here or does. So in other words, they're going to do what they want. And now we have the power play because already Colbert's gone, already Kimmel's gone. So next, obviously, would be Seth. I think Seth Meyers is the next go. Fallon's kind of not, somebody he might go after.
That's a very good analysis of where we are. And I just want to add a few things to it. Number one of the things I think has never been more important is it's not just what someone does, it's why and how they do it. Okay, so based on that, what Disney, Hulu, corporation, which is actually owned by another corporation, which is actually in charge of another corporation, so what Paramount CBS did is they decided they were going to end the Colbert Show, which is definitely their right to do.
Oh, you're talking about Brendan Carr with the FCC?
Well, we'll get into Brendan Carr in a moment.
Okay.
But Paramount, the first was, as you said, the first was Colbert.
Right.
Well, they're definitely with their rights to do that. But this is where it gets hairy. Two things are going on. One is they were involved in a project that needed FCC government approval. That is why they did it.
Right.
Pure and simple. Now it gets even more complex because Trump had already indicated that Colbert was his enemy.
Yes.
Right? So is that government censorship? So the courts would have to resolve that out, and they will. Okay. Second thing, the Kimmel situation is a little different, but very similar. What they did is a temporary suspension of Jimmy Kimmel because of just what you said. Now, here's really where it gets interesting. Okay. Again, we've got the money. They also are applying for needed. Now you've got the FCC involved in this,
right?
And you've got Trump, and you've got a gentleman, and he deserves to be called a gentleman. I'm not being sarcastic. Just another man,
right?
Charlie Kirk, who I will go on record as saying was not good for America. There are over 400 times, it's been documented over 400 times, where he spoke things that if you believe in America as it should be, were antithetical to that. He became known as a great debater. Bullshit. There's not a debating coach or anyone who knows anything about debating that was in any way debate. What he did was he came up with this thing, defiant, as so many are on the right, and they're defiant on the left too, but anyway, the right. And he said one of his shticks was, prove me wrong. And so he would go to college campuses, set up just like where he was assassinated.
Right.
And he would bring young students, college students up, and then embarrass them and make fun of them by making them look stupid. Okay. We also, there's, and the list, I'm not going to, anybody look it up. Charlie Kirk was not a good man, and he certainly wasn't a good
right. We shouldn't be bowing down to this guy. I mean, look, he was murdered, and that's never good. But a lot of people who were, I'm not endorsing the murder, but to put this, isn't it melodrama basically here?
Well, what it is, okay. Let's not kid ourselves. Today, one of my former students and I got into a nice debate, very respectful debate. She feels that
I don't know if they learned anything from you, Dave, because they didn't seem to make very good art. I think I know what you're talking about. I won't go into the names.
No, this is another person.
Okay.
And she is from outside school where they're all bad, right? So let's not pick on, and that's not true.
In the blackboard jungle type or what?
Well, no. What I meant was she feels that there's equal to blame on the Democratic side.
Oh, okay, I got you. Okay.
And the historical side. It's like saying, well, the Democrats were the ones for slavery. Yes, they were in the Civil War.
Right.
But we also have anesthesia now. We don't soft
Right.
limbs usually win.
Japan was our enemy. Now they're our friend. This is
So
what
it's all
happens.
this. But anyway, I mean, in a way, it's kind of a way, it's an idealistic view, but it's not true. But anyway, she also bought into uh, she bought into Trump. She's not a Trumpist by any stretch of the imagination. They're all bums, throw them out. But please don't be against them. Well, yeah. Anyway, you have some. But if you are a MAGA person, Charlie Kirk is your martyr. Okay, and as we tend to do with our martyrs, we make them immortal, and we also make them completely virtuous. It's the way that it is. Now, I can think of a few people who are less deserving of being made a martyr than Charlie Kirk, but the list is not that long. He's in the top 100 that should not be made a martyr. But you get one of my personal favorites, little Mikey Johnson. And Michael has the audacity to say, as the Speaker of the House, that he talks about Kirk and free speech at length. And he says, that was he wasn't. I mean, I don't know how many times you can say it. I don't know how many times now, try to convince MAGA of anything is foolish for this
Right.
point. But let's get back to what happens now. Now, there are ways to fight back, all right? One way, as soon as the announcement came in Colbert, by the next night, did you see that all the late night hosts were on board
Yes.
of saying this is wrong? Every one of them. Now,
It would have looked bad if they didn't, quite frankly.
Well, I don't
They'll lose half their audience.
Well,
too,
the
just
thing
like
is, though,
Disney.
I mean, really, there's a competition between them, right? One of them should have said, kind of said, but they didn't.
But now there really isn't competition between them. Now it's they need each other.
Well, they need it. They knew that then, and
They're
I think
connected like molecules.
Now, again, I urge somebody out there. I haven't had time to do this, but the number that I saw was with current cancellations and stock prices drops. Disney, we'll call it Disney because it's really Disney Hulu, but NBC. They've lost $3.1 billion.
Good. I heard it was a little more than that. It was closer to 4 now.
Well, this is
one day.
This is the other thing. Yeah.
Good.
Now, so
Keep
it is
going.
good. Of course, it's good. So what that says is you can do what you want
But there are
as a
consequences.
company. You can fire and hire who you want. But if we think it was done for the wrong reason, or we think as Americans, it's not the right thing to do, or if we think that indeed what happened, you were either kissing Donald Trump's ass or another part of his body to get something passed that will give you more billions, we will show you. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Brian, you have you have no children, but you know children, right?
Right.
And
I work with them
every
every
kid's
single day for 41
kid's
years.
dream. I want to go to Disney. I want to go to Disney. It's the happiest place on earth once upon a time, supposedly. Well, now, like we do in so many other things, Disney is now completely political. Do you tell your child, no, we're not going to go, and explain that to them? I would do that. I don't know that everybody wants to do that. A lot of people say their kids are too young. How do you tell a 3-year-old? How do you describe Donald Trump to a 3-year-old? You just say, when you had that, here's how you do it. When you had that last temper tantrum, and we talked about that, well, the president of the United States acted just like you did in that temper tantrum, because he does act like a 3-year-old. So maybe that would work.
Right.
But now, we don't know, Americans don't have the ability sometimes to sustain long campaigns. Now, another thing about this, we don't have to worry about Jimmy Kimmel. We don't have to worry about Stephen Colbert. They are set. If they never work another day in life, they are set.
Right.
Way
That's
above
not the issue. That's not the issue.
That's not the issue. But people will say that. You've seen it. I've seen it already. Don't worry about me. And they are. Some network is going to pick them up.
Right.
Or
maybe
somebody
Rachel
will pick 'em
Maddow
up.
will start something. They're saying that.
Who knows? But you're right. That's not the issue. The issue is Donald Trump believes now, and gleefully believes, that he is opposed to someone, no matter who it is, no matter in what position they're in, no matter how much power they may or may not have, that he can eliminate that threat that really isn't there. Now, let's say there's history is replete with this in journalism. I mean, it's been forever. One of the biggest ones, which is I would point this out. I'm sure you've seen it, Brian. It's been out there for a while. Lyndon Johnson's quote about, it's the role of the president to accept that. And of course, now here's where it gets interesting again. During his time in the presidency, the Smothers Brothers, one of the greatest comedy variety shows in the history of television,
Right.
was canceled because Lyndon Johnson wanted them canceled. So he hid behind that, right? But let's not, it's not anything new. Again, when you're looking at entertainment, whether it's comics, music, actors, whatever, what should I say? There's always been this kind of thing. They, especially the three networks, ABC, NBC, they can't do certain things because it's against what the public thinks or what the public wants. Now, I'm going to comment on that for just a moment because it's all part and parcel. What Veg says right there, and everybody can read that, right?
Right.
Homan, is a Trumper, is part of the cabinet,
Definitely.
and he was recorded and making and receiving a $50,000 bribe.
Right.
Once Patel and Bondi got into their positions, the investigation was dropped. Now, it's one thing if you said, we're going to investigate the Kennedy assassination or whatever, oh, come on, but this, there's no doubt from people that this was absolutely a bribe, that it was absolutely the money exchanged hands, and yet nothing. Crickets, as people say. So, should we be concerned? Of course we should be concerned. You said in the beginning, Brian, this show, well, of course, I would go on record if, Donald Trump was in front of me. I would say the same things I would say every other day. But he certainly, it could come down. I mean, they're knocking down the big ones now, okay? Some, and again, can't blame them, a couple of his whipping girls from the past have left the country, okay? I don't know if anybody else, where I live, of course, a lot of people here, Brian, are seeking to establish second citizenship so that they can leave the country, but leave the country as citizens of the country they're going to. And many of the people are older, and they don't plan to do it, but they want to establish this because if they do, then their children can be and their grandchildren could be. And right now, America is not a country that you would want to live in or necessarily come to. We are much closer to your expertise country, Russia. We are much closer to Saudi Arabia. We are much closer to North Korea. We are much closer to Cuba than we are to Canada. Or
And I want to add this because this is something that we have to be cognizant of, and that is that, and I said this in the previous show, but as of September 1st, the Russians were expected to download this program called Max. And basically what it is it's a way for the government to look after you because they know the number one device is the cell phone because people carry them around in Russia just like they do here. And they can track every single thing that you do, where you are, and what you say. And then especially in the searches. So they're putting in so much pressure there. Again, this is the way Russia has typically handled this. This is the norm there. But this is where we are going with this, Dave. This is what I'm saying.
See, Brian, you and I differ a little bit in that. Not a lot, but just a little bit. I say this. Yes, Russia has a way of acting that is totally Russian. Absolutely true.
Yeah, it's got an Asian, it's definitely got that Genghis Khan thing. It's still there.
It's got the Russian thing. But America also has an image of the way it acted. Notice I didn't say the way it always acted. We can go back. Did we have concentration camps? We certainly did in World War II.
We did.
Did Abraham Lincoln suspend habeas corpus? He certainly did in the Civil War. Did John Adams push the Sedition Act as the second president? But overall, it was supposed to be these freedoms. America is supposed to be free. I don't think any Russian has really ever
tasted it. There was 2 months in 1917, the Kerensky government, where it was almost there, and it didn't fucking happen.
So I'm not dismissing the danger. I'm just saying we have to be careful when we say this happened in Russia and it will happen here.
Right. Now, but I'm going to interject though.
Right.
With Russia, it didn't happen without the acquiescence of a lot of people. And you've mentioned like the Civil War, that some people just sat at home, and that's what happened in Russia too. Some just sat
Right.
back, and that gave the Red Army the ability. Had 8,000 soldiers, and then they look where they went with it. And this is what I'm saying is that you don't need a large number of people. You just have to have a group of people and enough of them, and these things can push through. And this is what worries me because we have
Well,
so
of
many
course.
people who sit and look, and rightly so. Maybe they're afraid. How many of us are going to fight back if they say you get caught doing this? Look at what ABC did. Are you any different than ABC? Am I any different than ABC? Well, we'll find out on Divided We Stand. Maybe 2 years from
Well,
now, everything's got to be shut down.
okay. So let's just say, would you agree that free speech in America is under heavy threat right now?
100%.
Would you agree that it hasn't been canceled completely yet, but with the powers that
Right.
be,
Yeah, I agree with that.
is leaning toward canceling it. So you can't
Right.
just say
That's why you have to look at the continuum, Dave, and you
Exactly.
see what's happening. You see a progression, and I see nothing stopping it right now. The key will be 26, but I don't have a lot of faith in that.
Well, and we can get into that 26. Will there be elections? Will there be fair elections? We don't know. But right now, I'm going to be interested. The one I'm going to follow is a motto that comes from journalism, or journalism as it used to be anyway. Follow the money.
Yes, money.
The
talk.
only thing that
Ozzie
will bring
Myers
Kimmel,
said that.
the only thing that will bring Kimmel back is if Disney, Hulu, whatever that conglomerate is, decides that it's going to cost them too much.
Right. They'll look at the
And
utilitarian. They'll just look at it.
who has more power, the people canceling or Trump? Well, they both equal money, but in the long run, I would say they might even side with the people because this one merger will get them where they want to go, which they're both mergers and things. But it doesn't mean it will work necessarily. However, now we're saying, okay, Trump doesn't even. Now, this week, if you want something to, by the way, I like Michael's comment. He's up there now. What was it? Saying about trickle down to my economy. No, there is no such. The only thing that trickles down is, I assume, when Donald Trump pees, because of his age. I know it happens to most of us old folk. Probably a little bit of his pee trickles down his leg. That's the only thing. Trickle down money doesn't come anywhere. But this week, Brian, one of the things that I find somewhat encouraging, not completely, 3 people, believe it or not, spoke out against what's going on with Kimmel that I was somewhat surprised. Okay, I'd like to just mention them again. We're not going to make them heroes.
No.
We're just going to say,
don't make Bill Barr a hero, no matter what.
No, I'm just saying. But let me do this again.
Or Chris Christie.
I do this all the time on my Facebook pages, on my political pages. There is a saying: "The enemy of my enemy is my friend." That is not true and should never be followed. What should be is, the enemy of my enemy is my frenemy, which means for this moment, he is with me. So the first one is a longtime Republican who now looks pretty good in retrospect, Karl Rove. And Karl came out and he was talking about the Kirk thing and he said, use the right pronouns. Now listen, I thought this was brilliant. They didn't kill Charlie Kirk. That's the wrong pronoun. He killed Charlie Kirk. One man killed Charlie Kirk.
Right.
And we have no idea at this moment why he did it. We don't know anything about his politics. We don't know anything. But what they try to do with the martyr, they killed. Well, we know who the they is. It's you, me, anybody who listens to this program, anybody who's not MAGA. So that, now, does anybody listen to him? No. Anybody who listens to Karl Rove is not a MAGA. They're already gone. Okay. That would be like the Liz Cheneys and the people. But still, I found that encouraging. And he also castigated Trump for striking back against political enemies. Okay, that's good. The next, wow, Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson came out and said, it's a free speech issue and we must have free speech. Now that's boiling down what he said.
But how far is he going to go with it, or any of those 3, Well,
hold that thought for a minute, okay?
Good.
The third was my least favorite. Well, that's the other senator's pretty bad too. I was going to say my least favorite from Texas, Ted Cruz. Now, Ted Cruz has come out before in wishy-washy, but he actually said that the Kimmel cancellation was, and I quote, dangerous as hell. Okay, so remember I said we're looking not just at what people do, but how and why they do it. First of all, I'm going to give all props for how they did it. They did it publicly, and that's the way a politician is supposed to do. They didn't do it in secret, hitting. They came right out and hit. So that's good. Now, what they did, yeah, they're right. I mean, that's it. Now, the why is the one is the hardest to figure out, and it's there. I would say, and again, maybe time will prove me wrong. I don't think Trump is as powerful as he was the day he assumed office.
Which are you talking about this particular election?
This particular time, yep. Right. I do not believe this. He thinks he has more power, and it seemed like it. But already he just keeps pushing and pushing because he's capable of having a rational thought. And you're seeing more and more people begin his own party. Now, politicians only have one goal, Brian. What's their one goal? They must get elected, and then they must get reelected. You know, what was it? The movie Fight Club. There's only one rule in Fight Club. So when
let's say some people are legit. But
give me one politician who's legit. You can't. Do you know why? Every one of them has been compromised in some way in order to get where they are. You can't do that. I'm not saying anything's bad with compromise. I'm just saying you can't do that. Bernie Sanders, love it. Great. Look at his track record for the NRA.
How about White House? I mean, he seems, to me.
If you go back into the depths, I'm not saying they're bad people.
No, I get what you're saying, but look, they're liars and they're damn liars. I mean, you still have to
and they're not lying. They're not lying either. They just have to make some compromises, and you can make not every. In fact, that's one of the problems with MAGA, Brian. One of the problems with MAGA is compromise does not exist in their vocabulary. Now, a lot of words don't exist in their limited vocabulary, but and on some issues it is hard to compromise. Gary just put up, and he's absolutely right. Cruz, I think Cruz has probably given up the idea he could be president, but he wants to be senator. And the way things are going, is kind of in flux. I will say this: I guarantee you, if there were a vote today, I'm not saying Trump would lose, but I'm saying Trump would not have as many votes as he got.
Right. Well, I want to ask you this on those lines. Let's talk about, just for a minute here, about Abbott in Texas.
Correct.
Do you think that if the election, again, because we know what happened with O'Rourke and Cruz, then later, do you think that Abbott will have a dedicated, fair election process if it's 50-50?
No, well, I'll say this. If he wins, yeah.
Right.
If he loses, no. It's that simple.
I think he's got to be one of the worst governors right now.
I do.
He's obnoxious.
Too. You know who I even think I would say is possibly as bad or worse. I would say DeSantis in Florida. Simply because
heard a lot about him of late, though, have you?
Well, because he's done some crazy stuff, though.
Right.
I mean,
done that.
Vaccines are optional in schools now. I mean, so he also, okay, let's try it this way. I believe, call Ted. I don't have his number on speed dial. But like I said, I just mentioned, I think Ted Cruz has given up the idea he'll ever be president. I don't think Ron DeSantis has given up that idea. So again, it's calculating. And the only connection I have to Ron DeSantis is my sister-in-law, who's now deceased, was once his personal secretary before he got into politics in his law office. And she said that when Ron, before he started running, she calls him Ron, I'd have to call him Mr. DeSantis, Ron was a much different person than the day he decided to run. He made his compromises and off he goes, right? So yeah, and again, that's why are you doing something? Now, if we get back and kind of can wrap up this Kimmel thing, and you can't wrap it up. It's still
it is the story around the world.
No question.
Jimmy Kimmel's name, he could definitely brand it now around the world.
Okay. Think about this. There are people who didn't even know who Jimmy Kimmel was. I know that sounds surprising, but there could be. Well, now you got to be kind of the turtle, right, in your shell, not to know something about Jimmy Kimmel. Now, we all have our favorites, Brian. It just so happens that my two favorites in that field have been for a long time Stephen Colbert, who I think is brilliant at what he did on the Colbert Report and now, and let's see who else. Jon Stewart, but John, I think John deserves his break. I mean, he's taking kind of easy, but I think he's how it is when you're when you were playing music, Brian, when you were playing and you were playing all the time, right? You were on your game. If you took some time off, it took you.
Right, you get rusty. You're involved in other.
And
things.
I think John is a little bit.
But I mean, I'll say this, okay, and I kind of agree with you. I mean, I would go back and vacillate back and forth between Colbert and Stewart. But then of course you had Seth Meyers, who's excellent.
Right.
But I have to say this: it's kind of like we've talked about this, like your favorite song. Like you think, okay, my favorite song. Somebody might say "Stairway to Heaven," but if you look at the Apple playlist, maybe "Smoke on the Water" is the number one.
But both have been up there.
And I look at the amount of times that I laugh, and I have to say, this is just a personal observation.
Correct.
That Jimmy Kimmel makes me laugh more than all of them.
And there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. With it.
So I have to say, there's just something about Kimmel. As much as I tend to like the other ones, maybe a little more. I love Colbert. But Kimmel makes me laugh all the time. And it's very hard to make me laugh on anything.
Right.
I don't find a lot of things funny.
What I think is interesting about that is, of course, when Colbert, let's use Colbert for a quick example, when he was on Comedy Central, he had a network that will air South Park will certainly allow just about anything that Colbert brought up. CBS can't do that because they go into it used to be they go into conservative and liberal, and they still do to a certain extent. However, not CBS, ABC, and NBC do not have the power they once had because there's
networks. You had what 4?
Let me ask you a
that was
question.
It.
We cut the cord and it's so limited, but on your cable, right, with everything on there, how many options do you think you have of station of?
I have literally 1,500 options, and I may only see 2. I end up going to YouTube anyway. I mean, I can't stand it.
But what I'm saying is, if
I watch the Eagles, that's fine. But
okay, let's go back. I mentioned earlier LBJ. Okay, and what happened with the Smothers Brothers and him and the Critic, and of course, Smothers Brothers were canceled by CBS. But at that point, there were the 3 networks. PBS wasn't around.
And you had the UHF channels,
and in Philadelphia 29. That gave us 3 channels. But even counting PBS, that gave the Philadelphia area major market 7
But is it any different, Dave, than shifting from AM to FM? In the 70s, this is what happened.
Thing.
Cable, it was splintered. It's just the way it's going.
I've talked to a friend of mine who became a friend. He was the originator of the heavy metal show on Sirius XM. And he left to become a grocery store butcher. He's a very good one. And we were talking. I said, "Well, come on, man, you went to." He said, "Nope, they won't let me do what I want to do. When I first came on, you could do that." And that's always the case. As the money comes in, the suits, as they call them, get more and more into whatever. Do you really think that any Disney executive gives a shit about the quality of what they do? They want to see the bottom line. Now, so how does that? You got to come back in. Well, how does Kimmel? They just fired him because, or more Colbert, both. They just fired him because Kimmel wasn't funny. You just negated that for you.
Oh,
and
he was
millions
terribly funny.
Yeah,
he didn't like it because he was tearing him apart. He was leaving blood.
And that was it. And
I mean, nobody emasculated Trump any more than Jimmy Kimmel. I mean, Seth Meyers close, and the other ones do fine, but
they all did.
Kimmel was just.
No offense to Mr. Fallon.
He's kind of weak when it comes to Trump.
That would be my take. Now, the person we haven't mentioned who is also my favorite now with Colbert would be John Oliver. John Oliver is, to me, maybe the way Kimmel is to you. I just laugh. He's very
funny.
But it's not about.
But he's British. Well, I guess he's American now. But
But he was no, he was.
it does take away from it a little bit because he's not like the
But
voice
you know
you
what?
expect. But he's
Well,
funny.
see, but I go the other way. As I, if you were to ask me, nobody did. But if anybody on our network wants to know, the 10 most accurate news reports in the world are all from news organizations that reside or are based outside of the United States right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, John Oliver, I mean, it's kind of almost like he's looking at it through British eyes and saying, you people are crazy. Now, I want to come back for a moment about where we are and divided we stand in this. I'm on.
Yeah,
record
where are we? I don't know where we're going.
No.
with
No.
this.
I'm talking about the whole thing. We are divided as a country. That's a given. I firmly believe that we are too divided to get back together. Well, what does that mean? I don't know yet, right?
Right.
I do know this, that Republicans did an outstanding job in this respect. Going all the way back. I mean, this controversy, as we said 1,000 times, it bears repeating. This goes back to the founding of America. George Washington, acclamation, wanted to make him a king, basically, said, no, I'll be president, does 2 terms, leaves. Now, in our very first presidential contest, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, they were as opposite as 2 people could be. And that's really where this started. And because of money, and we've had other parties, Whigs and the do-nothings and all that.
Right.
But right now, the cost of running even a congressional race is way in the millions of dollars. I mean, that's absurd. Of course, we need there's just so much to do.
And we know why it's so high, that amount of money that is flooding into these campaigns, because it is a political war out there. They're out to win.
And yes.
So they can get everything. You put in the $1 million and you get $1 billion back. That's a pretty good deal.
I read it.
Great investment.
And I'm still debating whether I agree with it or not. I read an interesting thing when I was in Alaska. Column. I even forget who it was by. It was not a well-known columnist.
Right.
But it basically said, excuse me, that one of the reasons for the Democrats failing is that they concentrated on the top positions. Okay, president,
right?
Senate, in that, one of the reasons the Republicans succeeded is, and I really think this kicked into high gear. Really, this Republican thing really actually kicked in high gear as opposition to FDR and the New Deal, and it went through all its phases. If you look, that's the phases that it went through. Because the party of Lincoln, the Republican Party of Lincoln, would be a Democrat if he were alive.
Absolutely.
Today. And the Democrats would be Republicans if George McClellan, who was the general who ran against him.
And that's because we're still. I mean, most of that comes out of the South. That's where.
Correct. And I'll pick that up in a moment too. But the idea that the Democrats up here, well, all of a sudden, when you control the zoning board and the planning board and your city council, and next becomes your county organization, whether it's freeholders or commissioners. Then from there, you shift to the state assembly. From the state assembly, maybe the gubernatorial office, and then it goes on. So they were willing to do that. Also, I think in general, I believe this to be true. If you're against something, you are probably more vocal than if you're for something. And what were they against? They didn't like the books. They didn't like the teaching. They didn't like this. And so mothers, a lot of active mother groups formed against these dirty, filthy books. Okay, whatever. So you got all you got all this going on. But the other thing that said is also Republicans are better able to carry out mean vindictiveness than Democrats, and that is true. And we've discussed reasons for that. So my point is, if the Democrats get back in, it depends on who the Democrats are.
Right.
Who get back in. Now, we begin to see already great divisions. There's no question that the governor of Illinois is running for president. There's no question in my mind that Gavin Newsom is running for president. There's no question in my mind that Kamala Harris will run for president.
She'll make the attempt.
That's all I'm saying. Well, an attempt is an attempt. Because here's what happens, Brian. Let's say that you are, and I'm not trying to limit this to anybody, black, white, whatever, but if your candidate is Kamala and she doesn't win, right? Oftentimes you just back off. One of the reasons Trump got in
Right.
was
But
Bernie's supporter.
I was talking to an
Bernie,
app.
well, let me just
Okay.
finish this, Brian. Then go. One of the reasons, not one of the reasons that Donald Trump was was elected over Hillary Clinton is Bernie Sanders supporters. Many of them did not support Hillary Clinton because I understand that it was a value. She wasn't the same. I got all that, but you got Donald Trump from that. So the more candidates you have in a primary, I would hope. I mean, if you're asking me tomorrow, you get your choice. I'm going to go with Buttigieg, but that's again we've got whatever. So and today in DC, and I don't know how reliable it is. AOC is going to make an active run for the presidency, and certainly she'll have her supporters, and she certainly is speaking out, as is Congresswoman Crockett, as is Elizabeth Warren, as are a lot. There's Raskin. I mean, there are a lot of people. There's a lot of people. I'm glad to see that Sherrod Brown is running again in Ohio. I think he's just a really good kind of. When I say middle of the road, I don't mean that mundanely. I just mean I think he believes in America, and I think he's pretty good. But I mean, of course, he would not support Donald Trump, as nobody should. One other thing I want to say tonight's show, and I'm looking through, and then what I want you to do is go back through. We'll go back through the comments and see if there's any we need to comment on. Although people are answering each other, which is pretty good. Okay, this is a situation of America, and I think this captures us. Okay, so I'm on a ship in Alaska with 3,200 other people. Now, 400 of them are in this Concerts for Sea, which I'm writing about. But 2,800 are Alaska. And of course, you don't see all 3,200. But there was a band on there which captured my fancy, and it was one of the Prince's touring bands, meaning they're on the ship. I found out later, it was a couple from Argentina. Brian, this kid, well, he's a kid, he's 41. There were 5, 6 professional acts on there. He blew every guitar player away. Nobody could touch him. I thought his, I hate to use the word girlfriend, so I'm going to say his partner at that age. She had the best voice on the ship, better than anybody else, right? So I made it a point to go see them whenever I could. And they put on 2 shows a day in the open area of the piazza. And so this last night, they're going to do their last show, and I come down, and fortunately, there were a couple, the chairs are just spread around. And I got next to Mickey. I'm just going to introduce Mickey. And Mickey was one of the more interesting characters I've met. He could out-talk me. In the middle of the conversation, he says he was a used car salesman, okay, who made $300,000 a year selling used cars and sold his home in San Diego that he purchased for, think about this, he purchased it for $200,000, right, in San Diego, and sold it for $1.6 million. So he's pretty well set. And we were talking about everything under the sun, and it was just interesting, fascinating. One of his sons had died from fentanyl, and we're going back and forth. And he himself we were talking about drugs. He himself has smoked a joint every single day since 1966, a joint or more. And after doing this, he says, I got to ask you a question. I don't care what your answer is. He says, how do you feel about Donald Trump? I said, I despise him with everything. He said, I want to let you know I'm a Donald Trump supporter. Fine. Now, the reason we were able to interact, we had no connection to each other, and we knew that he's headed back to San Diego.
Right, you'll never see him again.
I'm headed to Washington, D.C. If we meet, could we? Yes. But the problem of this division comes when it's your mother, it's your aunt, it's everybody you grew up with, it's your whole town, right? Or, and that's
or where you work.
That everywhere, right? And so there's no way to escape it. We were talking, Brian and I only talked maybe 3 minutes or 4 minutes before the show. Right. And you were saying, and rightfully so, everybody, you look, oh my God, you can't. And that, Brian, is where I want to end tonight, is 2 things. Can't escape it. 3 things. You can't escape it. It really looks gloomy. So what does that mean? You just fight harder. There's no guarantee we're going to win. But I want to do a sports analogy, if you would. In case you don't know, both Brian and I are huge Eagles fans, Absolutely. Based on where we grew up and what we
Good day for us today, wasn't it, Dave?
Well, here's what it was. I happened to watch it from the Crystal City Sports Club. Just to describe, I don't get 3, 6, 10 anymore because we cut the cable. So it's fun to go up there. So they have about 100 TVs, and they had four giant, not the biggest, but with the Eagles game. So you're sitting with all Eagles fans, right? And at halftime, the score seemed like 101-2, but
Right.
it was pretty bad. And I said to Jude, I said, I got work to do. Should I go back? And I started talking to this guy next to me, young guy. And anyway, we stayed. And there was no point. There was no point in that game where you really, truly were convinced that the Eagles were going to win. You really weren't. You couldn't. They were outplayed. They were out this. Suddenly they open it up, and then suddenly you're close, and then they don't get that. And then they do get the other. But it comes down to a field goal. Now, I've been watching football for approximately, assuming I was about 8, when I did that would make it 65 years. And we saw something that game that I've never seen, and I would be surprised if it ever happened. The Eagles blocked 2 kicks in a row, a point after, and then ran it back. Now, how does that relate to what I'm saying? We don't, as weird as it sounds, Yogi Berra was right. It ain't over till it's over, and this is bad, and we're down, and it's getting near halftime, right? Or no, well, I guess you could even say the first quarter, but it really looks bad. But there's still more to go, and Trump is not a healthy person. He's not a sane person. He's not a good person. People are seeing his demise in terms of he is degenerating in front of their eyes. The sharks are out in the Republican Party. Peter Thiel would love nothing more than to have his protege, J.D. Vance, be president. So I don't think it's a time to say it's foolish to have hope. But hope, just like thoughts and prayers, is completely worthless without action. So I just ask everybody to do what they can. If they're opposed to Donald Trump, do whatever it is you feel you can do, and we'll go from there.
Right. Yeah, I did want to make one comment. I was talking with an African American officer who works in the district. I've been friendly with him for over a couple of years, and he's a conservative. I want to say a conservative Democrat. I think he's an independent, but he hates the Republicans, of course. But he said something interesting, because I know that you were mentioning Bernie Sanders and third-party voters just didn't vote for Kamala Harris. But he said something interesting. He said that a lot of black males resented Kamala Harris because they just don't. It's just in the culture. They don't want to deal with her. She's a strong, powerful woman, and they just don't like it. Now I don't know whether that's true. He thought that there were millions of votes.
I would say,
but I don't know. I just wanted to bring that up and throw that out because you know the community more than I do.
Anecdotal evidence that is indeed the case.
But isn't that shooting ourselves in the foot?
Well, yeah.
I mean, everybody's guilty. We can't just focus on one particular demographic.
Well, if you want to spread the guilt around, what about a Mexican or a Mexican American who's Catholic who voted for Trump because he's against abortion and their own people?
So we're saying is they can't be pragmatic.
Well, they're not.
Or the culture's too strong. That's
the
what it is.
culture is too strong. I mean, you can't make.
It's hard to change culture.
Well, and not only that. Suppose for a moment you just imagine that you are 100% convinced that abortion is murder and a sin. You got to go with the candidate who says he's not going to do that or she's not going to do that. I mean, it's real, or sit it out. But if you're really worried about the other candidate will make more abortions, then you vote for that person. And that is the fascinating thing that goes, that's the other side, or not, that's another thing with pop culture, just regular historical culture. But when you get to those issues, now, unfortunately, a lot of them are smoke
I think this is
and
true
mirrors.
here. Josh has a good comment. I like
Broad generalizations are inherently prejudicial. Yeah, Josh, of course. I mean, I'm not dismissing you like, of course, that's obvious. I'm just saying, well, Anthony.
Be careful how you say that, Anthony.
No, I'm with you. I'm very selective, though. And what happens, some of the women I want over the years have not wanted me, and I don't believe that. Michael, Clinton. I mean, okay, let's do it this way. I know time's running out. Brian, give me the year that you foresee that a woman could become president of the United States. And don't answer because it's too hard. We don't know. We just don't know.
I would turn that question around. Do
Go ahead.
you? Which party is more likely to be successful with a female becoming the lead presidential candidate? And
You want me to answer
it's
that?
got to be the Democrat. But as far as winning,
No, it's not.
I don't know.
It's the Republicans.
Yeah.
It's the Republicans. Because Republicans would draw all they have now, and they would pull some women. Because the difference is, and we've said this before, but it bears repeating, but the Democrats, by their very nature, are broad based. The Republicans, by their very nature, are conservative and closed. There's more chance that a Republican would vote for a presidential candidate that they didn't like than there is for a Democrat to vote for one. So I mean, you can't say it's just it's like which is better, Jimmy Kimmel or Stephen Colbert? When we start talking about this stuff, it just comes down to this. It is very simple that any sane, rational person who's not influenced by outside things, whether it's religion, whether it's community, whatever it is, could not see Donald Trump or should not see Donald Trump as a person who should be president of the United States. And Michael points that out. That also, Michael, from what I've read a little bit and talked to, that had some bearing on blacks. That was a no-no. So, and he was Jewish, and we still have that. And anyway, Brian, we'll end with this, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
Week has gone by. Well, actually, we did the show on Monday because of technical difficulties in Alaska. But are you more optimistic, less optimistic, or where you were this
Exactly
time
where I was. I don't see any change whatsoever. You?
I'm going to do, it's not a cop-out. I'm going to try to say I am less optimistic in one sense because of what Trump has done. But because of what I think the ultimate reaction will be to what he's done, I think I'm a tad more optimistic than I was. And to explain that position, we know what he's done, okay? We don't yet know the full reaction to it. And when some of these other things start kicking in, that he comes up with, and he'll go to the limit. I mean, now he's talking about NFL kickoff. I don't know if you caught that.
Yeah, I heard that shit.
I mean, he
gets his fingers into everything.
He can't shut his mouth.
He's got to shut the fuck up.
And also remember too, Brian, that I think we're a little bit. We understand, those of us on the East Coast, understand Donald Trump because I bet you it'd be interesting to do 6 degrees of separation. How many people within that 6 degrees have been fucked by Donald Trump on the East Coast? I bet you'd be up by 75%. Literally, contractors, whatever. But of course, in the other, he is the hero. But Charlie Kirk, will students get angry now? Wait a minute. I don't want what Kirk stood for. There's a movement sponsored by Johnson to put a statue of Charlie Kirk in every college and university in America. There we are.
Oh, God. I don't know. Well, anyway, Dave, I am going to have to shut down. Appreciate it, Dave.
Brian, if you didn't correspond with all the Russian hookers, you wouldn't have to do that. They can wait a night.
I trust them more than I would trust Trump. Listen, next week might be problematic. We'll see.
Maybe people can write.
If we come on later tomorrow.
Well, I have no problem with later, and it might be problematic for me too because I will be out of state again. But what I was going to say is, we could always pre-tape, and do it, and we may have to look at more of that.
Right.
Just if any of you aren't aware, Brian and I have done wouldn't be many, but we've done a few shows.
Right.
But when it's immediate. In fact, we actually discussed should we go on. After the Kimmel thing, we said no, we'll wait till Sunday. But anyway,
all right.
Well, thank you everyone. Thank you everyone who listened. Thank you everyone for everything or anything that you are doing. We are in a civil war. I got into that debate today. There's no question. We're divided. We're in a civil war. It's not the war between the states of 1861 and 1865. But if you look, there are a lot of parallels to the Cold War. And we are in a Cold War. And this time it ain't with them. It's with us.
All right, folks. Thank you. And Dave, okay. So I'll keep in touch with you, Dave, about next week. Okay.
All right. Whatever happens. We'll figure it out.
All right.
Goodbye,
Be
everyone.
safe out there in Washington. See you.
Oh, that's.